Thanks again for the introduction, Russ. Since we took the hat off, and I plan to do that anyway, before I start my 2 hours of remarks, please, it's a no-hat area, so anybody out there that wants to take theirs off and get comfortable and stretch and move around a little bit, feel free to do that. So get comfortable here. Aloha to all who have joined us here today, but especially a heartfelt welcome to our Gold Star families. They are seated among you today, many holding yellow roses. We're here to honor their sacrifice. After the ceremony, I encourage you to introduce yourself to them, talk with them, learn their stories, and celebrate their loved ones with them. We also honor the service and sacrifice of battalion soldiers who served during the Vietnam War and the Iraq conflict. To do that, we need to remember, retell, and reaffirm who and what the 100th Battalion are. We step back in history to the inception of the 100th Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. It was a time of cultural allegiance and a crisis of heritage. Fear, racism, and isolationism flooded the nation's psyche. Many of us grew up hearing stories of the battalion's World War II heroism and patriotism. However, unless a family member or a friend had served in the battalion, there were few direct interactions with those heroes. In 1987, the Smithsonian Museum opened a special exhibit on the history of Americans of Japanese ancestry. That turned many historical events into real for the soldiers of the battalion. As the commander at that time, I read the detail which spent over 3 weeks in Washington, D.C., providing color guard, escort duties, and other service for the World War II veterans and their families who attended. We interacted with scores of those veterans, and many of those veterans, it was the first time they had seen the battalion colors with battle streamers since World War II. Since a number of us at that time were already Vietnam vets, many of the World War II veterans opened up with stories about their personal experiences. Combat veterans talking to other combat veterans. Many of the families said they had never heard some of those stories. Those veterans reinforced what it meant to come from a special place and serve in a special unit. That culture of never do anything to shame the family. Always remember where you came from and know what duty and honor mean to the battalion, the family, and the nation. That generation's efforts resulted not only in a battle record unequaled by any other infantry battalion in the United States Army, but were the genesis for the most ethnically diverse organization in the Army today, both fitting legacies to carry into the future. When the battalion and the 29th Brigade Hawaii Army Guard were mobilized for the Vietnam War, the soldiers at that time honored their World War II heritage and stood to the colors. I was already in Vietnam when the battalion was mobilized, but like many Hawaii families, this call up was personal. My own brother-in-law would be called up with the 29th Brigade and deployed to Vietnam. All of us went to Vietnam as individual replacements. There was a huge blow to morale as suddenly you were in combat with a strange unit and strange soldiers. However, we all wore that shadow shoulder patch from the 100th, even if we served in the 1st Cav or the 25th Division or some other unit. We were often the only Hawaii soldier in the company. Unlike mainland soldiers who went to exotic places for R&R, like Hong Kong, Sydney, or Bangkok, we often came home for R&R. A close friend of mine from church was a 100th Battalion World War II vet. There was no way I was going to tell him that I hadn't done my duty to honor his service and sacrifice. Guard and reserve units often know each other better than soldiers and active duty units. We grew up together. We went to school together. We attended AT and drills together. We sometimes even married into each other's families. So the loss of one of those brothers was family in that unique ohana meaning of the word. Our welcome home was not the same as that enjoyed by our World War II predecessors. We came home to a nation that was at best neutral and at worst very negative. Vietnam veterans in unique ways banded together to take care of each other. We vowed never again to let our fellow soldiers go into harm's way alone and untrained. Vietnam veterans dedicated our efforts to building well-trained, well-equipped, and high morale units. We worked hard to professionalize the battalion and the brigade and build strong family support organizations. We would reinforce that culture of never do anything to shame the family. Always know what duty and honor mean to the battalion. That same spirit held true for the Iraq call-up. The battalion's present for duty numbers topped the nation. I was the chief of mobilization branch for USAPAC when the Iraq call-up came. The day those mobilization orders went public, I received 3 direct phone calls. Excuse me. The first from an active duty Sergeant First Class of Fort Benning, Georgia. The second from an Army Reserve soldier in Seattle. And the third from an infantry lieutenant serving on the DMZ in Korea. All were from Hawaii, and all had the same 3 questions. Is it true that the 100th Battalion is being called up and mobilized for Iraq? Yes, it is. Is it true that this time the colors are deploying, that the battalion will go as a unit? Yes. And the third question from every one of them was, what do I need to do to get transferred into the battalion before it deploys? We would receive many similar requests over the weeks leading to activation. If the battalion and the brigade were going into harm's way, Pacific Island soldiers from around the world were trying to come home to join them. I'd spent years serving with many of the soldiers in the battalion at that time. Although this deployment would be different as the battalion was going as a unit. Like Vietnam, it was personal. Again, we all knew each other. My own son would transfer in from Korea and serve as a platoon leader in Bravo Company. Like Vietnam, our sons, brothers, and friends came home on R&R. Like Vietnam, each loss was felt across the battalion and its extended Ohana. Like Vietnam, that loss would be most deeply felt by our Gold Star families. Like Vietnam, the soldiers of the battalion in Iraq would meet that challenge with courage and sacrifice. Their multi-ethnic background was a daily reminder to the Iraqis and locals of how different religions, races, and creeds could work together. The battalion accomplished its mission with distinction and true go-for-broke spirit. Our Vietnam and Iraq brothers served in conflicts that were often unpopular. Those soldiers had taken an oath to serve their country. They then honored that oath, often at great cost, as our Gold Star families clearly demonstrate. Our Vietnam and Iraq brothers in arms evaluated the risks and fears of that oath. Then they weighed those risks and fears against their obligations to family, the community, and the nation. Then with dignity and honor, they marched into harm's way. As the decades pass, historians and politicians continually reevaluate past national policy. But duty and honor are constants. Duty and honor remain frozen in the time and the circumstances during which those actions took place. We, who live in what to those soldiers was an uncertain future, are the beneficiaries of those difficult and heartfelt decisions made so long ago. They performed their duty as they understood it, under circumstances far outside the ability of the uninitiated to understand. We and the nation are deeply in their debt. The public forgets, but we remember. We remember every one of our brothers and sisters whose names are on that long black wall in Washington, D.C., and on memorial plaques across the country. We remember the Fish Hook, the Parrot's Beak, the Delta, the Iron Triangle, and Ashaw Valley. We remember Yathrib, LSE Anaconda, Balad, the Tigris, and Bakar village. We remember. Today's battalion members are the caretakers of those memories. Historically, on average, our nation has been engaged in armed conflict every 20 years since 1775. When the next challenge to American freedom comes remains unknown. But what is guaranteed is at some point in the future, the 100th Battalion will be called again. Those we honor today and those who have gone before have laid a special burden on today's 100th Battalion. I ask today's battalion soldiers to look closely at that ridgeline over there. Excuse me. In your mind's eye, you will see over 75 years of battalion troopers looking back at you. From snow-filled foxholes, dank, muddy jungles, and hot desert sands, like ghosts in silent overwatch, they expect you to carry on the duty and honor that goes with that shoulder patch. When the going gets tough, when the mission is hard, when the danger is close, will you, the future members of the 100th Battalion, do your duty? Will you honor their memory and do nothing to shame the family? Will you remember where you came from? Will you respect what duty and honor mean to the 100th Battalion family, our family? The mark is on the wall. The high standard has been set. Bucks up, Scouts out.